The anime begins with our protagonist, Kurogane Ikki, watching on TV as the second princess of the Vermilion Empire named Stella arrives at the Hagun Academy in the Tokyo Cavalry after being accepted with the highest score of all. Next, he walks while pondering how those without talent sometimes think they'll never reach where they want to go because they can't defeat those born with talent. But for him, it didn't have to be that way. He remembers when he was young, the day a man told him that despite his weakness, he hadn't given up on his frustration, meaning he hadn't given up on himself. So he summons a sword and begins training. Ikki is a blazer, a type of special being that can manifest their soul as a weapon and control their powers through magic. Blazers approved by international organizations are called magic knights, and that was Ikki's wish, to become a knight. To achieve this, he also entered Hagun Academy, as is one of the best knight schools in Japan. But as soon as he enters his room, he accidentally finds Princess Stella changing clothes, which gets him into trouble and requires him to report to the principal's office. The principal explains that even though it's one of the best schools for magic knights, there's a festival called the 7 Stars Battle Festival that determines the strongest knight, and their representatives usually win. However, in recent years, Hagun Academy has not performed well, which is why she took on the role of principal to rebuild the school. She then scolds Ikki, who had taken quite a slap in the face from Stella, and asks him to take on his responsibilities as a gentleman should. Ikki apologizes to the girl for what happened, but the princess was much angrier with him than he had thought. Fortunately, her magic is blocked by the fire detectors. With her soaking wet, he apologizes again and explains that he just entered his room. Stella thinks he's lying, but the principal clarifies that they are roommates, and that's why his room was also Ikki's. He questions the principal because normally students of the same level are roommates and Stella is a rank A, while he is only a failed knight of rank F whose only power is a slight improvement in his physical abilities, and to make matters worse, his magic is well below average. Stella is shocked by this information, and the principal explains that Ikki is literally the worst student in that school, and it's precisely because he is the worst and she's the best that they were placed together. To reassure Stella, the principal further explains that there are other students who are roommates in pairs, and if she doesn't like it, she can leave the school. With no other choice, Stella accepts being Ikki's roommate but imposes several rules on him, including things like not opening his eyes and not breathing. Obviously, Ikki explains that it's impossible to follow these absurd conditions. As the two begin to argue, the principal suggests that they settle things like gentlemen and let their swords decide in a simulated battle, with the winner establishing the room rules. Ikki thinks this idea is a fair way to resolve the situation, but Stella believes it's impossible for him, as a rank F, to defeat someone like her. However, since Ikki didn't seem to care about the rank difference, Stella decides to up the stakes by saying that whoever loses the battle will have to obey the winner for the rest of their life, becoming their servant. Ikki thinks it's an exaggeration, but since the girl was furious, he accepts the terms. So Stella goes to prepare for the battle and remembers when she was a child and told her mother that she wanted to become a knight because her nation needed a strong magic knight regardless of how much effort it would take. Meanwhile, Ikki was already waiting for her in the training arena for their simulated battle. The principal is surprised that Ikki is so calm about facing someone so far above his level, but he says that at some point he would have to face Stella anyway because he needed to win the 7 Stars Battle Festival to graduate despite having low scores and abilities. When Stella arrives in the arena, she tells Ikki that it's better for him to give up on being a knight, but he has no intention of doing so because he believes that effort can overcome talent. This reminds Stella of when she fought someone who thought the same way but changed her mind after losing to her, someone with talent. This makes her angry because it seems like no one recognizes that she also worked hard to get where she was, as if it were easy for her just because she had talent. Then the simulated battle begins, and the principal emphasizes that in this type of battle, there is no physical harm, but the damage drains the opponent's physical strength, and the equipment must be summoned in phantom form. So they both summon their weapons, and as expected, Stella starts attacking with everything she has. However, she is surprised to realize that Ikki not only dodges all her attacks, but also understands that she has more than just talent, managing to see her effort. She admits that he has keen eyes, but she says her technique isn't easy to interpret. However, Ikki surprises her even more because he not only understood the technique, but could also copy it perfectly. He explains that since no one taught him anything, he had to become good at copying moves because by understanding a technique perfectly, he could copy and even improve it. Then, after perfecting Stella's technique, Ikki manages to turn the tables, but this makes the girl furious. She gives up on defeating him with her sword skills and resorts to magic. However, Ikki is determined not to lose to the strong and uses another ability to become super fast and dodge her attacks long enough to strike Stella, winning the battle. However, with both of them physically drained, they collapse on the ground. Later, Stella wakes up and the principal checks on her. She admits that she had forgotten what it was like to lose and asks how Ikki is. The principal explains that his technique consumes everything in 1 minute and can only be used once a day, so he became much more exhausted than her, although there was no risk to his life. Then Stella questions why someone as capable as Ikki was in rank F, and the principal reminds her that ranks are based solely on blazer abilities, not things like fencing techniques or physical movements, so there was no system to evaluate Ikki. Even so, Stella doesn't understand why they would fail someone as capable as Ikki, and the principal says that even though he had all of his chances stolen, he continued to fight to improve himself, never giving up on himself. She reminds Stella that when she arrived at the school, she decided to study abroad because her country couldn't help her evolve, as everyone called her a prodigy. In other words, both of them don't limit themselves to rank data and always strive to improve, which is why the principal thought Stella could learn from Ikki, and that's why they became roommates. So Stella goes to their room to apologize to Ikki for limiting him, just as others do to her. She admits to losing the battle and asks how Ikki is. Ikki then says that, as agreed, she now has to obey him as his servant. Stella tries to escape the agreement, saying that she did mean it seriously, but Ikki insists that she keep her word. This makes the girl furious, but she reluctantly agrees to obey any of his orders, expecting the worst, but Ikki simply orders her to be a good roommate so they can get along. And so we see that the two of them were already getting along and even became friends, with Stella joining Ikki on his daily morning runs to compensate for his lack of magical power with his physical strength. On this specific day, Stella notices that Ikki seems happier than usual, and he explains that it's because his sister is coming to the school to study there too, and they haven't seen each other in 4 years. Later, they go to class where their new teacher introduces herself as Yuri, and Stella notices that the teacher has a somewhat morbid appearance. Yuri reminds the students of the ceremony where the principal announced that, unlike previous festivals, this year's representatives would be chosen not based on their abilities but through battles in which all students would participate, with the 6 winners becoming the school's representatives. She then mentions that the school sports festival will start next week and everyone will be informed of their fight schedule and opponents via email, which should be checked regularly. Stella then asks how many fights they will have in total, and Yuri replies that easily more than 10. Which means having a fight every 3 days, allowing Ikki to use his ability. The teacher continues her explanation, saying that those who don't want to fight can withdraw from the battle since the results won't affect their grades much, though she advises everyone to participate for a fair competition, encouraging the students to do their best. However, just when she finishes her motivational speech, Yuri falls ill, something she explains is quite common. Ikki then tells Stella that it was thanks to Professor Yuri that he was accepted into the school, but Yuri denies it, saying it was his own ability that got him in despite the previous year being unhappy. After class, Stella asks what the teacher meant, and Ikki explains that the previous year he couldn't attend any classes. At that moment, a girl appears and grabs Ikki's arms. Stella asks who she is, but he doesn't even know. The girl is a complete stranger who had watched their simulated battle and was now a big fan of him. This makes Stella angry and she walks away. Quickly, Ikki gets rid of the girl's grasp and runs to Stella. But due to the confusion, his sister Shizuku ends up finding him, revealing that she was the second best among the freshmen. Ikki is overjoyed to finally see his sister after such a long time, but out of nowhere, she decides to kiss him, leaving everyone around in shock. She explains that in some countries, this is a common way to show affection to loved ones, including siblings. However, Stella reminds Shizuku that they were in Japan, a country that didn't have this custom, and consumed by jealousy, she separates them, irritating Shizuku. The two start arguing, and Shizuku questions what Stella has to do with her brother's life, making her loudly declare that he is her master, leading everyone to misunderstand the nature of their relationship. Then Shizuku gets ready for a fight, summoning her sword, and Stella does the same. They exchange insults and start a battle right there, something strictly prohibited by the school. Using the devices in an unauthorized location would usually result in suspension, but since it was Shizuku's first day, the principal only orders the two of them to clean all 27 women's restrooms at the school for a week as punishment, which they do while exchanging insults. After this long day, the two continue arguing until it's time to go to their dormitories. Shizuku asks Stella to stay away from her brother for the rest of her life, but she retorts that it's impossible since they are roommates and questions why she's so obsessed with her own brother. Shizuku responds that there are things that only blood relatives can understand, accidentally revealing that Ikki felt like he had never existed. Regretting having said too much, she decides to leave for her dormitory, where she meets her roommate, who introduces herself as Alice. Later, Stella is still thinking about what Shizuku told her about Ikki while waiting for him to return from his run. As soon as Ikki arrives, he's surprised to see Stella waiting for him and explains that he thought she wouldn't accompany him because she must be tired from cleaning the restrooms. The girl then decides to be direct and asks if he was treated as if he didn't exist. He quickly understands that his sister must have said something to her and proceeds to explain everything, sharing his past and how he was mistreated by his family. He asks if Stella knows the samurai named Ryoma Kurogane, the hero who led Japan to victory in the last World War. She says she does, and Ikki reveals that he's his grandfather and the man he wants to become one day. He tells her that for generations his family produced brilliant blazers, but because he was born without any talent, his parents and relatives started treating him as if he didn't exist, completely disregarding him even at family events. During one of these parties on New Year's Eve, he couldn't take it anymore and ran away, not knowing where to go. However, the weather worsened and he ended up getting lost, thinking he would die in such a frustrating way. Ikki continues to explain that it was at that moment that he met his grandfather, who told him to hold onto that feeling of frustration, as it proved that he hadn't given up on himself. Ryoma also told him not to become a dull man who gives up on life, because those who don't give up can become anything they want, as they were creatures that went to the moon even without wings. Ikki explains that despite being just words, they saved him, and that's why he has wanted to become stronger ever since, to become a man like his grandfather, someone who can help people in the same situation he was in. For this, he wanted to become a knight even though no one taught him anything, and he had to practice everything by himself, which makes Stella identify with him. And as if being mistreated by his family all of his life wasn't enough, Ikki reveals that none of his relatives wanted someone as much of a failure as him to become a knight, and pressured the school to change the requirements to attend classes so that he couldn't graduate. He says that they will probably continue to hurt him, but he still won't give up. Stella tells him that she has felt something similar, and the two of them are quite competitive. Meanwhile, Shizuku talks to Alice about how she has always liked her brother because he is a kind person, until she found out how her family mistreated him. This made her despise them all and decide to show all kinds of love to her brother, including paternal, maternal, and fraternal love. She apologizes for opening up to someone she just met, but Alice is very understanding, explaining that he met someone like her some time ago and they had a long-lasting relationship, so he's used to having this kind of conversation. He tells her that she can talk to him about anything anytime she wants. On the following day, Stella and Ikki honed their combat skills with their swords, and after their training, they took a short break. Ikki inquired if she had received an email stating who her first opponent in the festival would be. Stella replied that it would be Momotani, a third-year student. Ikki mentioned that he had seen Momotani fight once and began to describe his technique, but Stella expressed no interest in gathering information about her opponent. She viewed these battles as training for the future, where she might encounter unknown blazers whose abilities she wouldn't be aware of. However, she understood why Ikki enjoyed investigating his opponents. Ikki found it amusing how well they got along despite being opposites, which left Stella feeling embarrassed. She became timid and struggled to mention that they wouldn't have classes the next day as it was Saturday, hinting at the possibility of a date. However, Shizuku was quicker and sent a message inviting her brother to go out. And so Kurogane, Stella, Shizuku, and Alice met the next day for a day out. Finally, Ikki got to know his sister's roommate, while the two girls began the outing by bickering and teasing each other. The four decided to spend the day walking around a shopping mall, which made Stella jealous when she saw the two siblings holding hands, a common display of affection among family members they believed. Stella mentioned that she could also hold Ikki's hand, but Shizuku pointed out that holding someone's hand without family ties implied romantic feelings, making Stella blush and abandon the idea. Later, they stopped at an ice cream parlor to enjoy some treats. When Ikki noticed his sister had gotten messy, he helped her clean up. Wanting the same attention, Stella deliberately smeared her face with ice cream, prompting Ikki to fetch a towel, as her mess was on a different level than Shizuku's. Unbeknownst to them, the shopping mall was being overrun by criminals. After the meal, Ikki and Alice went to the men's restroom to wash up. Ikki expressed his happiness at seeing his sister trust someone so much, as it was unusual for her to be so friendly and not shy around others. He thanked Alice for being Shizuku's friend as she had described him. At that moment, Alice heard footsteps outside and sensed something was amiss. The criminals were at the restroom door and burst in, firing shots and causing chaos. Fortunately, the two were safe, thanks to Alice's shadow magic, which allowed him to create portals. They deduced that the shopping mall had likely been taken over by the criminals. Concerned for the safety of the girls, Alice armed himself, explaining that he could control shadows with his sword and move swiftly through portals. So they teleported to the security room, where they found all the guards unconscious from an anesthetic. Ikki called the school's director to report the situation. She explained that she was already aware of the incident, as some shoppers had escaped and called the police who had surrounded the area. However, as it seemed the criminals had a blazer among them, the director and Ikki deduced that these individuals likely wanted more than just money and took pleasure in terrorizing people. As a result, she authorized the four to use their magic and weapons outside the school to assist the police. Meanwhile, the criminals had indeed taken control of the shopping mall and taken women and children hostage, infuriating Stella with their despicable actions. Shizuku calmed her and revealed a plan. At that moment, a mother pleaded with the criminals not to harm her child, but they showed no mercy and attacked both the woman and the child, who bravely threw ice cream at one of the criminals in an attempt to protect his mother. The criminal decided to punish the child for his behavior by firing multiple shots at him, but Stella intervened in time using her shield magic to protect the boy. She demanded to speak to the gang's leader to negotiate. When he arrived, he greeted her as a princess. The leader introduced himself as Bisho and questioned why one of his men had disobeyed his orders not to harm the hostages. After the explanation, Bisho decided to punish the mother for her son's behavior. However, it turned out to be a trap to provoke Stella into defending the woman. Bisho was also a blazer with a ring that could absorb attacks, while another ring on his other hand released the absorbed energy as an attack, causing Stella to suffer from her own power. He then told Stella that she could save the hostages if she stripped naked, and reluctantly, she obeyed. Ikki and Alice were observing from a distance, waiting for the right moment to intervene. However, when Ikki couldn't bear to watch Bisho's mistreatment of Stella any longer and attempted to intervene, Alice used his sword to restrain Ikki's shadow and encouraged him to trust his sister, who was secretly creating a magical barrier. In a matter of seconds, Shizuku's plan succeeded, and her water barrier protected all the hostages while the other three attacked the criminals. Ikki then used his ability to move at the speed of light, allowing him to assess the situation and dodge all the bullets until he reached Bisho, cutting off the hand that absorbed attacks and defeating the gang's leader. Alice continued to restrain his shadow just in case, and Bisho called for his henchmen, but Stella had already defeated them, completely ending the criminal's threat. Later, Ikki felt the physical toll of using his power, but they discovered that a young woman had infiltrated the group of hostages and posed a threat to an innocent woman. Fortunately, another blazer easily defeated the intruder. He was a student from Hagun College named Kirihara, who had been the previous year's school representative. He later boasted to the girls about saving one of the hostages. However, he lacked humility and treated the situation as if he were the hero who saved the weak Kurogane, someone incapable of becoming a knight. This annoyed Stella, who argued that Ikki was much stronger, but Kirihara laughed it off. He recounted how the previous year, a guy had fled from a battle between the two of them, afraid to face him. Ironically, now he was Ikki's first opponent in the Battle of Seven Stars Festival, which meant that Ikki would have to confront his fear and face Kirihara if he wanted to become a knight. A few days later, Stella faced her first opponent in the battle, who quickly gave up and surrendered in fear, granting Stella her first victory. Alice and Shizuku then also won their battles and met a girl named Kagami, a journalist from the news club, the same girl who claimed to be a fan of Ikki. She quickly befriended Alice, as they shared an interest in school rumors and gossip. Stella returned to her dormitory, where Ikki was analyzing his opponent Kirihara's previous battles. He congratulated Stella on her victory and explained that he had been watching Kirihara's battle recordings in an attempt to get used to his rhythm. Kirihara's technique, called Invisible Area, allowed him to create a forest that made him invisible and allowed him to shoot from a distance, eliminating any trace of his presence, including his scent, making it perfect camouflage. Ikki commented that Kirihara only fought in his own style, attacking from a safe distance, and that's why he was known as a hunter. He never fought opponents who could challenge his style. In a battle against Stella, he would surely give up since she could attack a large area with her power. However, for Ikki, who had no magic and only fought with a sword, Kirihara was the worst opponent he could face. Stella found Kirihara's way of fighting to be cowardly and asked if Ikki would be okay. He confidently assured her that he would win the fight, putting Stella at ease. But even though he didn't want to admit it, he was worried about the battle because he couldn't afford to lose his first fight. As usual, he went for a walk and ran into Alice, who asked if it was true that he had been injured by Kirihara the previous year. Aki explained that the director from the previous year had connections with his family and was determined to find a way to get him expelled from school. So in an attempt to get him expelled, they asked Kirihara to pick a fight with Ikki. Kirihara liked the idea of making Ikki his target and cowardly challenged him to a duel, immediately starting to shoot at him, even though Ikki made it clear that he didn't want to fight. Ikki explained to Alice that he had to endure the blows without defending himself because if he had used his ability, the teachers would have seen that the battle was mutual, and he would have been expelled. However, since that didn't happen, he wasn't penalized. Alice asked what he would have done if the school situation hadn't changed, and Ikki replied that he just wanted people around him to see his strength, no matter how many years it took. Alice then remarked that he was used to enduring pain in silence. unlike others who screamed when they reached their limit, whether out of anger, irritation, or sadness. But because Ikki endured his feelings in silence, he hoped that someday someone would hear the cry of his heart. And so the day of the battle between Ikki and Kirihara arrived. Ikki decided to wait in the waiting room, trying to remain calm. Then he entered the room and signed a waiver without hesitation, acknowledging that in the real battle, his life was at risk. A girl named Seikyo was observing Ikki and was impressed by how quickly he accepted the terms, as they usually only had simulated battles without risks until high school. She was well known throughout the school as a temporary instructor and was acquainted with the director, who appeared and took her away. With 30 minutes left until the battle, Ikki tried to concentrate, but the minutes flew by and he felt the pressure not to lose his first official battle after all his efforts. Finally, the long-awaited moment arrived and both of them entered the arena to face each other, with all the students eagerly watching. When the battle began, Ikki was extremely tense, while Kirihara was confident in facing someone so low in rank and started his hunt in the forest, activating his camouflage technique. Even though he became completely invisible, Ikki managed to defend against all the arrows and use their trajectories to locate Kirihara's position. Ikki told him he could shoot as many arrows as he wanted, but he would dodge them all and find his position. However, Kirihara evolved his technique to launch invisible arrows that began to injure Ikki. Kirihara started torturing him by announcing where he would shoot on Ikki's body, completely wounding him and rendering him unable to fight. In the audience, Stella wondered why Ikki didn't attack Kirihara right at the beginning of the battle before he used camouflage, since Ikki knew his chances would be slim once it was activated. Alice explained that nervousness had led him to make a poor decision. Stella found it strange because Ikki seemed so calm about the battle. Then she realized that he was obviously nervous, considering what he had to go through to have the chance to participate in the official battle. She blamed herself for not realizing it sooner. Meanwhile, Ikki was getting more and more injured by the arrows, feeling defeated while the audience mocked him, a rank F who expected to win the battle festival. Some even speculated that his victory against Stella was either luck or rigged. With Ikki increasingly wounded and Kirihara mocking him while the audience laughed, Stella couldn't bear to see her beloved suffer. She shouted for everyone to stop treating him like a fool and for Ikki not to give up as he always did, and to keep his head held high. With her shout of support, even though he was gravely injured, Ikki stood up and thanked Stella for the motivation. He then punched himself in the face to wake up and start fighting. Kirihara remained confident, thinking it was impossible for Ikki to do anything, but Ikki understood that trying to catch the arrows with his eyes was pointless. He activated his speed power while remembering the pain from the arrows he had taken, where they hit him, and the time it took for them to reach him. With this, Ikki deeply understood Kirihara's technique, who decided to start shooting to kill. However, Ikki could now predict where the arrows would hit. He destroyed all the arrows and tracked them back to Kirihara, who had no other moves left and began to panic, shooting multiple arrows in succession and changing positions to make it difficult for Ikki to locate him. Even so, Ikki managed to defeat him and turn the tide by attacking Kirihara with a sharp spear, becoming the new hunter of the battle. The cowardly Kirihara begged for mercy and admitted defeat. Ikki stopped his spear just before it hit Kirihara and won his first official battle, thanks to Stella's help. After using his power as usual, Ikki passed out and was taken to hospital due to his injuries. When he woke up, he saw Stella sleeping next to him, while his sister was outside the room worried about him, despite having Alice's support. Later, Stella woke up and felt embarrassed that Ikki had seen her drooling while she slept. He apologized for making her worry and admitted that he liked her, saying he felt that it was the right moment to open up about his feelings. She asked him to close his eyes and she kissed him on the cheek, showing that she reciprocated his feelings. Ikki was overjoyed because he felt that with Stella by his side, he could surpass his limits. They promised to stay in the battle festival so they could face each other in another official battle, and Stella vowed not to lose as she did last time. 2 weeks pass and we discover that Ikki and Stella are officially dating. However, Stella is dissatisfied with their relationship because Ikki doesn't have much time for her anymore. He's in the midst of his 5th consecutive victory at the 7 Stars Battle Festival, and unlike before, he now has several fans cheering for him, keeping him busy and making Stella incredibly jealous. And things are about to get worse because his fans ask Ikki to train them in swordsmanship, and being the kind person he is, he agrees to teach his new students. But Stella isn't the only one feeling jealous. Ikki is also making other guys green with envy. Later, in the couple's room, Stella explains that if Ikki teaches swordsmanship to the girls, he'll essentially be training his future competition. But Ikki doesn't mind, he believes it will make the battles more exciting. He also thinks it could help the girls protect themselves and save others, especially after their previous incident at the mall. Stella acknowledges his generosity and begins to say that they've been dating for 2 weeks but hasn't done anything that couples normally do. However, Ikki has already fallen asleep, leaving her talking to herself. The next day, Ikki gives his first swordsmanship class, asking his students to balance on one foot to strengthen their core muscles and understand the importance of a strong center of gravity in battle. Kagami is thrilled with the lesson and diligently takes notes in her agenda. However, at this moment, the jealous guys show up and disrupt Ikki's class, threatening him with their weapons. Kagami is worried, but Ikki easily disarms and defeats them while reminding them of the school rules prohibiting weapon use outside the arena. Immediately, they all apologize for their actions and beg to become his students too. Ikki was winning everyone over and gaining more fame, attracting more students to learn swordsmanship. To get closer to him, Stella asks if he's thirsty, hiding 2 drinks behind her. But Shizuku, as always, is quicker and gives her brother a drink, causing Stella to down both bottles out of frustration. Shizuku then asks her brother to teach her swordsmanship too, and he agrees, explaining that she doesn't want to learn from their family's master, who mistreated Ikki all his life. Stella also asks to learn swordsmanship, but Ikki acts as if he doesn't want to teach her, leaving her completely irritated. Later in their room, Stella once again wishes they could do more couple-like activities, as they haven't held hands, kissed, or done anything typical of a couple so far. At that moment, Ikki invites her to the pool the next day as he's taking the group for swordsmanship training. Stella questions why he's inviting her, given that it seemed he didn't want to teach her swordsmanship. Ikki takes the opportunity to explain that he doesn't want to train her, but believes she has already surpassed his level and their techniques are quite different. He worries that swordsmanship might hinder her rather than help. With the situation clarified, the next day, Stella accompanies Ikki, along with his numerous swordsmanship students. However, contrary to her expectations, he remains focused on teaching his techniques to the students instead of spending time with his girlfriend. Frustrated, she watches the lesson from a distance and even tries to follow his instructions to feel closer to him, but gets startled by Kagami, who appears out of nowhere. Even though Stella hasn't told anyone about her relationship with Ikki, Kagami figures it out and makes her confess. Kagami expresses curiosity about what they've done as a couple, but Stella admits they haven't had much time as a couple and haven't even kissed. Stella then opens up about her feelings, how she loves everything about Ikki, and how she's sad they haven't done typical couple things. Kagami suggests that if Ikki hasn't made a move in 2 weeks, Stella should take the initiative herself and decides to help the couple by calling Ikki for a conversation without giving Stella a chance to stop her. So Ikki goes to Stella and asks her what she wants to talk about. Nervous, she ends up asking him what he thinks of her bikini. He responds with disinterest and mentions they've been dating for 2 weeks but haven't done anything as a couple, making him wonder if they should continue that way. This sends Stella into a panic, and she starts crying, thinking he's breaking up with her. Ikki tries to explain that it's not what he meant, but they both start yelling at each other that they love each other while continuing to argue without understanding the reason. They eventually realize they both want to take the next step in their relationship but are afraid of giving the wrong impression. Ikki decides that they should say what they want at the same time, as Stella and Ikki both say they want to kiss. So the couple shares their first kiss in the pool, resolving their issues. On the way back, they are much more relaxed with each other, holding hands in a sweet and affectionate manner, just like a true couple. However, at that moment, they receive an email with their next opponent for the upcoming battle. Stella will have to face one of the student council members, who appear to be rather mysterious and determined to showcase their power to the princess. Just like Stella, Ikki's next opponent also turned out to be one of the student council members. As a result, the couple faces them, but no matter how challenging a battle against a student council member may be, fortunately, the two prove their potential by defeating their opponents. However, instead of feeling happy that she and her boyfriend had achieved another victory, Stella couldn't help but feel jealous of Ikki's sister, who never left his side for a minute, leaving Stella feeling left out. But Ikki had other concerns on his mind because he had noticed that he had been followed by an unknown girl for some time. When he mentioned this, the girls immediately became worried that Ikki might have a stalker, and Alice suggested that he see what the girl wanted. However, as soon as he approached the girl to talk to her, she panicked and ended up falling into a lake. After Ikki saved her, the girl introduced herself as Ayatsuji Ayase, and he recognized her last name, discovering that she was the daughter of a skilled swordsman named Kaido, known as the Last Samurai. Since Stella and Alice claimed not to know him, Shizuku explained that Kaido was a man who had won all the known tournaments, a true master, although he wasn't a blazer. Ikki was completely excited because he had been a big fan of Kaido since childhood. He explained that he had studied swordsmanship by watching his fights on video and was honored to meet the daughter of his idol. However, Ayase sadly explained that her father was hospitalized due to an accident that happened in one of his fights, but she was happy to know that someone like Ikki was a fan of her beloved father. Then Shizuku asked why she had been following her brother, thinking the worst of the girl. But Ayase explained that she had followed him for days because she wanted to learn swordsmanship from him, as she couldn't improve her skills training alone, but she didn't know how to ask Ikki, as they didn't even know each other. Ikki, as always, was understanding and agreed to help her train. They then dueled, and right away he noticed why Ayase couldn't make progress despite being very skilled in swordsmanship. He explained that she couldn't progress because she was trying to reach her father's level by imitating his fighting style. Despite Kaido being an excellent samurai, they were of different genders, and the more she tried to imitate her father, the more apparent this difference became. He then said he knew how to fix it, but explained that it wouldn't be the same fighting style as her father's. After correcting her movements, she wouldn't be able to go back, so he asked if that was okay with her. Ayase agreed because her desire was to become stronger, even if her technique differed from her father's. Ikki then used anatomical techniques to relax the girl's muscles, while explaining that women had more flexibility in their legs than men, and that if she used her hip joint, her movements would become much faster. After the muscle relaxation, he asked them to duel again, and it was immediately clear that the girl was much faster because she now attacked using her legs instead of her arms. Ayase was extremely grateful, considering it a miracle, as she had found such a good teacher as Ikki, who had helped her improve within minutes, making Stella feel a twinge of jealousy. After the training, Ayase commented that Ikki's hands were large and rough like her father's, a compliment that he admitted he had never expected to receive, and she asked him to continue training her because she needed to get stronger for battles. While the two were talking, Stella asked Shizuku if she was also bothered by the girl, but Shizuku explained that she had no reason to feel anything since Ikki was just giving her swordsmanship lessons. She added that she only wanted her dear brother to be happy, so if he found someone who made him happy, she wouldn't mind, although she didn't believe there was anyone who could make her brother as happy as she did. Stella considered Shizuku's response mature but short-lived, as the two girls soon started teasing each other again. At night, Stella took the opportunity to confide in her boyfriend, saying that even though she knew he was only training Ayase, she couldn't help but feel a little insecure. However, he reassured her, reminding her that she was the only girl he cared about. The next day, Stella was much more at ease with Ayase and even helped with her training. After class, the three of them went out to dinner together. The girl thanked them for the training and said that she was improving more and more, feeling closer to her beloved father. At that moment, some guys appeared at the restaurant and started picking a fight with Ayase. Even though he didn't know who they were or how they knew the girl, Ikki defended his new friend. However, this only made the leader of the guys named Kurishiki break a glass over his head. Stella was furious and ready to fight, but even though he was injured, Ikki stopped her and maintained a smile, being friendly to the guys who had just broken a glass over his head. They saw Ikki as a coward who didn't have the courage to confront Kurishiki, known as the Sword Devourer, who even spat in his face. But Ikki contained his girlfriend's anger and kept being friendly as if nothing had happened, making the troublemakers eventually leave. Once they left, Stella questioned why Ikki let the guys do as they pleased, and he explained that if he had confronted that group, he didn't know if he could have won the fight without using his ability. Using his ability outside of school could lead to his expulsion. Although he didn't say anything, it was clear that Ayase felt bad about Ikki going through that because of her. But before she could say anything, a boy appeared and explained that Kurishiki was the ace of the Danro Academy and picked fights with anyone who stood out. He also mentioned that Kurishiki had been one of the best at the 7 Stars Battle Festival the previous year. Then a woman appeared and said that if they had actually fought, everyone would have been in trouble. Stella was confused about who these two were, and Ikki explained that they were members of the student council at Hagun Academy, with the boy being the vice president named Misogi and the woman being in charge of their finances named Canada. The boy decided to help Ikki because of his good attitude in avoiding conflicts, using his magic to heal the wound on his head. Even though Ikki was healed, Stella still wondered what the troublemakers wanted. However, as Ikki noticed that Ayase was uncomfortable revealing the truth, he simply told her that if she had any problems, she could count on him. However, at that moment, they both received an email notifying them of their opponents in the next battle, where Ikki would have to face Ayase. The girl hurriedly read her email and also didn't show up for training the next day. Later, Alice told Ikki that it made sense for her to disappear because she had a strong desire to participate in the 7 Stars Battle Festival, but had no chance of winning the fight against him scheduled for the next day. Ikki then showed that she had sent a message asking to meet him, and Alice warned that it was probably a trap, advising him not to go. However, Ikki said that she was his friend and that he wasn't the kind of person who played dirty tricks, so he decided to meet Ayase despite Alice's warnings. As soon as he arrived at the meeting, he noticed that the girl was different with a dark vibe. She explained to Ikki that she had found out that he and Stella had promised to face each other in the 7 Stars Battle Festival, and asked what he would do if he had to face an opponent he couldn't defeat before that. He simply replied that he would fight fairly with all he had. However, Ayase says that to her, It didn't make sense because justice that didn't bring results was just a waste of time. So she uses her power to cut through the security barrier of the place and then jumps from an absurd height. Desperate to save his friend, Ikki jumps after her and activates his ability, becoming super fast, which allows him to catch the girl and use his speed to safely land them in the water. However, he is surprised to discover that this was exactly what she wanted because, since he could only use this ability once a day, he wouldn't be able to recover in time to use it in their battle, giving her a slight chance of victory. Even though he might be better at sword fighting than she is, she still has her unique blazer power. Ikki asks her why she wants to win so badly that she's willing to throw away her knightly pride and dishonor her father, but the girl doesn't listen and leaves him alone and extremely tired from using his ability. Fortunately, he manages to reach his dormitory before collapsing on top of Stella, waking her from her dream. When he wakes up, he finds himself in the infirmary with Stella, Shizuku, and Alice by his side and only a few hours left until his battle with Ayase, which is enough time for him to recover. Alice had informed the girls that he had gone to meet his opponent, and Stella asks what happened when the director appears and asks to speak with him. She explains that since he had gone to the infirmary, she deduced that he was responsible for the damage to the building, which he caused when he threw them into the water during the fall. However, he only says that he accepts any punishment but can't explain what happened, and obviously, the director understands that he was trying to cover for someone. Sir Ikki asks about Ayase, and the director explains that 2 years ago, her father, Kaido, became unable to wield a sword due to a fight with the sword devourer Kurashiki. Moreover, due to an agreement they had before the battle, all the lands and houses owned by Kaido and Ayase's family went to Kurashiki, while he was hospitalized and unconscious ever since. Meanwhile, we see Ayase paying a visit to her father. She remembers him telling her never to forget her pride and always to help the weak, facing her enemies fairly and cleanly to become a worthy swordsman. However, as she recalls the cruelty Kurashiki made her and her father endure, she vows to do everything she can to face him in the 7-Star Battle Festival and reclaim everything they lost. With Ikki knowing more about Ayase's past, he says he will do his best to fight with all his strength and fairly, even though she wants to play dirty. However, he says that he still has one thing to do before the fight and asks Stella to go with him. And so the moment of the battle finally arrives and Professor Yuri is there to watch. The two finally enter the arena, and everyone at the school is eager to see who will win the battle of swordsmen, the teacher or the student, especially since Ikki had taught Ayase how to evolve. They both draw their swords, and Stella wonders what Ayase's power is since no one knows. In the previous year, she hadn't participated in any official matches, and in the fights of that year, she had won only with her fencing skills, meaning that her power would make all the difference in the outcome of that battle. As soon as the fight begins, Ikki leaps toward Ayase to strike, but with just a touch of her sword, she wounds him even from a distance. No one understands how Ayase did it, but she continues to inflict serious wounds on her opponent. Her ability involves preparing the environment with her sword, making strikes in the air, and then opening the wounds when a person passes through them, as if they had been struck by a sword. In other words, the girl had cheated and set hundreds of traps in the arena before the battle began so that as soon as Ikki passed through any space marked by her sword, he would be cut by the strike she had prepared. The two continue to duel, and Alice and Shizuku realize that what Ayase did was against the rules since using abilities before the battle began was prohibited. Therefore, victory would automatically be awarded to Ikki. However, Ayase realizes that Professor Yuri had not yet noticed her cheating and hopes it stays that way. She thinks she has already won and prepares to hit Ikki with another of her traps, but to her surprise, Ikki has an excellent sense of observation and manages to dodge the trap, although he can't move his arm in time, taking a hit on it. Ayase then realizes that if she can hit a vital point on Ikki, the injury could be fatal and starts dueling with him again, leading him to a specific spot to execute the blow. Shizuku worries about her brother, but fortunately, Ayase hesitates to strike Ikki in that manner. She then realizes that Ikki was the one who had actually led them to that location and immediately retreats. He says he's glad to know he wasn't wrong about the kind of person she is since she could have delivered a fatal blow but chose not to. We see that before the battle began, he had gone with Stella to speak with Professor Yuri to warn her that he was certain Ayase would violate the rules of the fight, but to ignore this violation on purpose. Both the teacher and Stella were puzzled by his request, as if she were to cheat, victory would automatically be awarded to him. However, Ikki says he wants to believe in Ayase and restore his friendship with her, which explains why the teacher turned a blind eye throughout the fight. Ikki tells Ayase that her strikes were completely off balance, and she was ignoring everything she had learned from him and everything she already knew. Even though she tried to act like a bad person, she couldn't deceive her own soul, and when her mind wandered, her sword couldn't show its true potential. But she says that pride is worthless if it doesn't bring results, and that she will win no matter what, Ikki runs toward her to fight, managing to evade all the traps with his perfect vision. Ayase thinks she can't lose that battle in any way, and to do so, she has to be faster than Ikki's vision. So in desperation, she activates all her traps, causing an explosion. However, even with all of her power, Ikki remains unharmed and strikes her directly, winning the battle. Although he activated his ghost mode for the attack, so it wouldn't harm Ayase but only drain her energy as in unofficial battles. Even though she isn't injured, Ayase is completely unable to continue that fight. With her defeat, she finally realizes that she was in the wrong, and Ikki offers to help her recover what her family had lost. Ayase is surprised that he still wants to help her after everything she had done, but Ikki says that he doesn't need a reason to help a friend and extends his hand, making her remember her beloved father and beg for Ikki's help. We delve deeper into the past of Ayatsuji Kaido, the skilled swordsman known as the Last Samurai, and Ayase's father, who retired when she was in elementary school due to a heart condition. Unable to wield his sword as he once did due to health issues, he passed on his teachings through the Ayatsuji school. He also imparted his secret technique to his daughter, a technique he believed was a form of swordsmanship that protected people. However, Ayase knew he had taught her this technique when she was still immature, lacking much time for training. In the present, Ikki, along with Stella and Ayase, confronts Kurashiki, one of the top 8 in the 7 Stars Battle Festival, known as the Sword Devourer, who attacks other schools and took over the Ayatsuji school 2 years ago. Ayase recounts that he is so strong that when he defeated her father in battle, he used only his sword technique, meaning he managed to defeat the man known as the Last Samurai using only swords. In a flashback, we witness his fight against Kaido, who, despite giving his all, struggled to stay on his feet, refusing to surrender and abandon the battle, while Kurashiki reveled in the suffering of all. Nevertheless, Kaido held his ground, but due to his health complications, he gave Kurashiki an opportunity to attack. Thus, they lost the Ayatsuji school and Kaido was gravely injured, barely able to speak to his daughter before losing consciousness. Ayase is still infuriated by the nightmare she endured, all because a man without a shred of dignity managed to defeat her beloved father. So the three of them go to the Ayatsuji school, where Ikki challenges Kurashiki to a duel in exchange for reclaiming the school. Kurashiki asks why Ikki is so confident now when the last time they met, he showed no courage to face him. Ake explains that on that day, he would have had to disregard his academy's rules because he couldn't use abilities without permission. However, it's quite different when you're inside a martial arts school like that one, where all it takes is the school's master's permission to use abilities, and Kurashiki is the master. So Kurashiki summons his weapon, resembling a sword-devouring snake, which is likely why he's known as the Devourer of Swords. This makes it challenging for Ikki to control the enemy's range, but it doesn't stop him from fighting on and even predicting Kurashiki's movements with his perfect vision, landing a blow on his opponent who promptly evades. With this, Ikki realizes that Kurashiki's abilities lie in his incredible reflexes and speed, allowing him to deliver rapid strikes. One of them grazes Ikki, showcasing Kurashiki's ability to react much faster than normal. So while a regular person takes 0.3 seconds to react, individuals with training like Stella and Ikki take 0.1 seconds. Kurashiki reacts in less than 0.05 seconds, even before Ikki completes a move, allowing him to dodge attacks that would normally be impossible to avoid and even correct the course of his sword. This speed gives him a significant advantage since Kurashiki can evade attacks that others find challenging to dodge. Kurashiki is impressed because Ikki is the first to figure out how his ability works in just one battle, but he doesn't care because he can easily dodge all their incredible techniques with his incredible speed. He then attacks with everything he has, and Ikki continues to defend himself well, prompting Kurashiki to increase his speed further, unleashing a quadruple attack, inflicting a superficial wound on Ikki. Anyone else would be terrified, but instead, Ikki starts enjoying the fight. Ayase tries to stop it, concerned for her friend's safety, but Stella restrains her, explaining that if she stops the fight, she'll never recover her school. Although she's also worried, she doesn't want to spoil Ikki's fun. It's at this moment that Ayase notices he's smiling, and Stella explains that he's only thinking about defeating a strong opponent, a fun challenge, something Kaido probably felt when fighting Kurashiki. Ayase doesn't understand, as she was too focused on the pain Kurashiki caused her family. Stella explains that a swordsman as famous as Kaido, referred to as the Last Samurai, must have been unhappy living day after day without any challenge. When he had the chance to face a worthy opponent, he must have had fun. Ayase begins to cry, finally realizing that what Stella said was true, and that her father's last words after the battle, which she hadn't understood until now, were his way of apologizing for being that way, a swordsman incapable of refusing a challenge. She cries, realizing that she couldn't comprehend her father's soul, and Stella comforts her when they're both startled by the noise of the battle and realize that the powerful Kurashiki has a weakness. His ability is draining, causing him to tire quickly. However, even with one extremely tired and the other injured, neither of them is willing to give up the fight. Ikki is so driven by his thirst for victory and his desire to help his friend that he continues to fight, even though Kurishiki is about to unleash his best move. Kurishiki recognizes his move as the same one Kaido tried to use 2 years ago in their duel, leading him to believe that he will defeat Ikki as he did Kaido. Then both deliver their strikes, but we see that Ikki manages to land his, causing Kurishiki to lose the battle with that blow. Ayase then recognizes that what Ikki used was her father's secret technique and wonders how he discovered it, remembering that she attempted that move in her training. Stella explains that Ikki easily copies other techniques after seeing how they work, making him a much stronger opponent than he appears. Kurishiki admits defeat, giving up the Ayatsuji school, and says that he and Ikki will fight again in the Seven Stars Battle Festival. As he leaves, Ikki feels the pain of his injuries, and Ayase regrets putting him in that situation for not being a true swordsman, as she didn't understand her father's feelings. But Ikki tells her that if she didn't understand Kaido, he wouldn't have been able to copy the technique, and she is the true successor. She thanks him for his words, but says that she must become much stronger, have peace in being the last samurai's successor. And so, Ayase regains her school, and later we find out that she took on her responsibilities by confessing that she cheated in the battle against Ikki, leading to her removal from the match selection. Furthermore, her father had finally regained consciousness and was on the path to recovery. She informs Stella and Ikki of the good news, and they are happy that everything is working out for their friend. Time passes, and Ikki continues to win every battle he faces, securing victory in his 12th official school battle. Shortly after, the director invites him to go on a trip with Stella to the school's training camp, and they both get excited about finally having a week of rest and spending time as a couple. However, someone who isn't thrilled about this trip is Shizuku, who feels sad because she can't go with her brother. Still, Alice says that based on her intuition, the trip won't be the vacation everyone had in mind. She turns out to be right because as soon as the couple arrives at the camp, they meet the student council members. Despite having a bit of fun with them, the council members quickly make it clear that they didn't come there for leisure. In reality, the director invited Stella and Ikki to the camp because the council needed more people to help clean the place, as they needed to leave it in good condition for the class representatives who would visit the following month. Furthermore, the vice president reveals that Toka, the student council president, was eager to meet Ikki, but she had been running late and would only arrive later. Stella feels as if her plans for a romantic vacation with Ikki have been dashed. However, she's not the only one having a bad day. While the two are cleaning the camp, Shizuku has returned home at her mother's request, and the only member she seems happy to see again is her cat. Later, after finishing the cleaning, Stella and Ikki decide to visit the waterfall to at least enjoy a bit of the trip. However, after a long walk, Stella starts feeling unwell, and Ikki realizes she has a bad cold. He thinks it would be best for them to give up on the trip and return to the camp. He helps Stella remove her wet clothes to prevent her from getting even colder. Both of them feel embarrassed by the situation, but Ikki focuses on helping her feel better. They wait in a cabin for the rain to stop. This moment leads them to discuss taking their relationship to the next level, but Ikki believes it's not the right time and Stella agrees. Then Ikki receives a call from the student council and tells them where they are sheltering from the rain. However, they are unaware that they are being watched by an informant of the sinister man who is pleased to have located Ikki. Meanwhile, Shizuku visits her father, who had called her to check on how she's doing, living away from home. He proudly mentions that he heard she was winning all her battles, and that it's a credit to their family. This only irritates Shizuku because he shows concern only for her, ignoring that his son is also living away and winning all his battles. She asks if he doesn't care about Ikki, and he replies that it's not that, but she calls him a liar and leaves, showing how much she despises being at home. Back to the couple, Ikki hears a strange noise outside the cabin and goes out to see a giant creature about to crush the place. He rushes to get his beloved out of the cabin, and after ensuring Stella's safety by leaning her against a tree, he activates his speed ability and destroys the creature. However, to his dismay, it reconstructs itself within seconds, turning into multiple creatures. Ikki tries to confront them but gets hit, causing Stella to cry out in concern. Her scream attracts everyone's attention. Since she's in no condition to react, the student council arrives just in time to save the day and keep the couple safe. However, no matter how many times they defeat the creatures, they keep coming back. Akai thinks there must be a blazer controlling them somewhere, and the vice president agrees, mentioning it's probably a steel wire user, a blazer who uses magical ropes to control inorganic substances from a distance, with some capable of controlling objects dozens of kilometers away. Ikki asks how they will stop the person behind the attack when a girl appears and explains that no matter how far the person is, by tracking the rope, it's possible to locate the perpetrator. She then attacks them all at once with her lightning power and uses a skill called Thunder Cut to shock one of the creatures connected to a blazer's cord, causing him to receive a powerful shock. However, the boss doesn't seem to care, stating that there are other ways to attack. For now, though, the problem is resolved thanks to the lightning girl named Toka, the student council president. She not only is the school's strongest knight, but was also one of the top 4 in the 7 Stars Battle Festival the previous year. Now she's the next opponent Shizuku will have to face. Shizuku was born as the daughter of the Kurogane family's head and showed blazer talent from a young age. It could have made her a selfish person, but her brother showed her that right and wrong were independent of who did it, leading her to decide that she would follow him no matter what happened. And now she had to face the school's strongest knight. Stella and Ikki talked to Alice about what happened at the camp. Despite the headline about the attack by giant creatures, they hadn't yet discovered who was responsible. The group also discussed how Toka managed to thwart the attack, proving to be as skilled as rumored. This made them worry about Shizuku, who would face Toka in a battle the next day. Stella thought that Toka, being a lightning user, was the worst possible opponent for Shizuku since she was a water user. However, Alice explained that this wasn't a problem due to Shizuku's high level of magic, allowing her to create water that was impurity-free and had almost zero electrical conductivity. But even though she was strong, they knew it wouldn't be an easy fight. Ikki, despite hoping for his sister to win, only wished for her to leave the battle without injury. So Stella interrupted Shizuku's bath to see if she was too nervous for the battle. She made it clear that they would be rooting for her in the audience. Shizuku was surprised by Stella's concern. Later, she talked to Alice, feeling guilty about her brother's worry. For her, if it were Stella fighting Toka, he would simply trust in his girlfriend's abilities. This determination led her to become stronger, because if she couldn't win, she feared growing apart from Ikki, as he was on his way to being selected for the 7 Stars Battle Festival. So she promised herself that she would defeat the student council president and prove her worth to her brother. And so the next day, the 2 girls entered the arena to face each other. Even Seikyo was present to watch the battle. They both armed themselves, and Shizuku recognized that her opponent was above her level. This determination pushed her to win, to surpass her limits and show her potential to Ikki. However, when the battle began, they both remained still, not attacking, just waiting to see how the other would act because they knew each other's capabilities. Ikki understood that his sister didn't want to make the first move since Toka's most powerful weapon was used at close range, a super electromagnetic sword draw technique called Raikiri. Stella noted that Toka hadn't won the 7 Stars Battle Festival, meaning there was a way to dodge the attack. Ikki explained that the blazer who defeated her last year was a lancer who stayed out of Raikiri's range throughout the battle. Even the festival champion feared Toka's powerful technique as it was faster than the speed of light. He explained that it wouldn't be a problem for Shizuku to keep her distance from her opponent because she excelled in long-range magic. However, as Toka remained motionless, Shizuku decided to attack, using her ice to cover the arena. She attacked her opponent several times and Toka retaliated, realizing she had the advantage. While Toka only needed to release her lightning, Shizuku had to purify her water to avoid getting electrocuted and carry out her attacks. Despite this disadvantage, Shizuku was a formidable magician, defending herself while trapping her opponent in ice and attacking, multitasking impressively. Even the student council members were impressed because they knew Toka's immense skill, and seeing a freshman fight on par with her was astonishing, even making Toka acknowledge her opponent's abilities. However, the battle suddenly took a turn when Shizuku began to act as if her mind was elsewhere. Toka finally got close and used her Raikiri. It was revealed that Shizuku had created a clone, although she had indeed sustained an injury to her arm from the attack. Everyone was puzzled because Shizuku had gone from fighting evenly with her opponent to suddenly moving slowly and being unable to do anything but dodge Toka's attacks. Ikki realized that his sister couldn't see Toka's movements, something he had seen Seikyo do before. Out of nowhere, the girl appeared by his side and revealed the ability's name, Nukiashi, a combination of stealthy steps and ancient martial arts breathing techniques. Ikki understood that this skill caused Shizuku to look at Toka, but not realize she was seeing her, because her consciousness deemed the information unnecessary, only kicking in when her life was in danger, allowing her to dodge at the last second. At that moment, the director appeared, impressed that Ikki had already figured out how the technique worked. She explained that Nukiashi and Toka had learned the skill from the same knight known as Torajiro, the battle god. She continued, saying that unfortunately, Shizuku couldn't break the technique, and Ikki realized that his only chance of winning was to find a way to counter Raikiri, since he couldn't avoid the attack. Stella started rooting for Shizuku, and although she didn't mind having the girl's support, she thought that Stella and Ikki were surely going to be selected for the 7 Stars Battle Festival. Therefore, she had to surpass herself and win the battle to keep up with them. With that in mind, she attacked again, even though she couldn't shake off Toka's effects. Shizuku created several clones of herself and covered the arena with magical mist, making her the only one able to move freely, creating a slight advantage in the fight. However, even with all the clones and mist, Toka could still sense her opponent's movements and use her Reikiri on her. This made all the smoke disappear, and Shizuku fell to the ground, losing the battle, giving another victory to the student council president. Aki recognized that his sister had fought the best she could in that battle. At night, Shizuku finally woke up and saw that everyone was there with her. However, she asked them to leave because she wanted to be alone at that moment. Ikki and Stella left, respecting her request, but Alice stayed because she knew her friend wasn't well. He hugged Shizuku and told her she could open up now that they were alone, causing the girl to immediately start crying, releasing everything that had been pent up inside her. However, we see that the person responsible for the attack at the camp wanted Shizuku to lose and was about to take their next step. The selection for the Festival of the Battle of the Seven Stars continues with Stella and Ikki winning every battle to fulfill their promise to face each other in the finals. However, the couple was so happy to be close to keeping their promise that they didn't even realize they were being watched by a guy who took a photo of their kiss. With only a few battles left in the selection, the director calls Ikki to inform him that a man was secretly snooping around the school, the same person responsible for the attack at the camp. She explains that his name is Akaza, a cunning old man from the International Federation of Magic Knights who works for Ikki's father and is in charge of the ethics committee at the Japanese branch of the Federation. Ikki mentions that he has seen him a few times at his family's house, but both he and the director believe that Ikki's father is not involved in Akaza's actions. Eka explains that the man has always hated him, but the director assures him that she will fulfill her duty to protect her students. Next, the student council asks Ikki and Stella to accompany them to an orphanage, where they get to know Toka better. The vice president of the council, Misodi, explains that both he and Toka grew up in an orphanage and visit the children there whenever they can. They asked Ikki and Stella to join them so that Princess Stella could bring joy to the children. And so they spend a good amount of time at the orphanage, cheering up all the orphan children. During this time, they talk about Toka's fight with Shizuku, and Ikki comments that he noticed she could improve her accuracy by blocking her vision by removing her glasses. She explains that the human body is like a machine where all actions are transmitted to the brain, which emits a weak electrical current. As a lightning user, she can sense this electrical current with her ability called reverse vision, which she used to see Shizuku's attacks and win the fight, though she acknowledges that Ikki's sister was a formidable opponent. Later, Misogi tells Ikki that the children at the orphanage sometimes face many difficulties and Toka did everything she could to make them happy. She can save one of them, helping her regain her humanity because the love of her parents and the happiness they gave her persisted even after their death. So since becoming an orphan, she has made it her mission to provide such memories to children who didn't have that love. He explains that this is why Toka strives to win the battles, as a way to inspire the children to have courage and strength, which is the source of her power. This makes Ikki start to question what his source of power it is, but as soon as he and Stella return from their outing, he discovers that he has bigger problems. His friends show him that news of their relationship has spread, and everyone is talking about how the princess is dating a mere rank F, highlighting this difference in rank and calling Ikki weak. Next, Akaza appears and says that due to the news, he must be interrogated by the ethics committee. Stella begins to protest, but as always, Ikki prefers to avoid conflict and decides to go with Akaza without questioning, asking Alice to take care of Stella and Shizuku in his absence. And so, Ikki is taken to the Japanese branch where Akaza interrogates him with questions about when he started dating the princess. Ikki answers all the questions with a clear conscience, making it clear that he and Stella did nothing wrong or indecent as they were accused. However, despite doing nothing wrong, Ikki is confined to a room, and the days pass with him having to fight in the selection battles while imprisoned, while Stella does the same at school despite missing him terribly. More than a week later, Ikki remains in confinement while at school. Everyone whispers about the couple's life, making Stella wonder if it would be better to end their relationship since it was causing so much trouble for Ikki. But this only makes Shizuku angry, and she launches a water attack on Stella. She knows how much her brother values his relationship with Stella and how hard he is working for her. Realizing how hard her boyfriend is fighting to fulfill their promise to face each other in the Festival of the Battle of the Seven Stars, Stella cuts a piece of her hair and sends it to him through the teacher Yuri, as a way to give him strength and show that she is also making an effort to keep the promise. Then, after days of nothing changing, Ikki asks to speak directly with his father, the branch leader, to appeal his innocence directly to him. His father acknowledges his victories in the battles, and Ikki realizes that the reason he's been striving is to prove his strength and worth to his father. However, contrary to what he thought, his father doesn't hate him, he just has no feelings for him, considering his own son a mere failure. His father says that if someone incapable like him keeps achieving things, it can give other incapable people unnecessary confidence, which could harm their organization. Therefore, Ikki must stop winning battles and accept who he is. This makes Ikki realize that there was never any possibility of bond between him and his father, making him feel that his goal of proving his worth to this man was quite foolish, and he's surprised to see how he is still affected by his family. After more than 2 weeks in confinement, Ayase finally informs him that he will have a chance to be free from them. He explains that Ikki will have his final selection battle, and if he wants to prove himself qualified to become a Magic Knight, he must defeat his opponent, Toka, the student council president who defeated his sister, Shizuku. But if he loses in the duel, he will have to give up his dream of becoming a Magic Knight. The problem was that his father's words had affected Ikki more than expected, leaving him feeling completely demotivated to fight, unlike Toka, who was motivated to inspire the orphanage children. So Toka calls Shizuku to have a conversation to say that despite not agreeing with how that fight was clearly set up for Ikki, she will fight with all her might to win. Knowing that he was not in good condition, she thinks it's best for him to give up and not appear in the arena. Shizuku then goes to her dormitory, where she tells Alice what happened and asks if she should stop her brother. Alice responds that she knows Ikki better than anyone, and having seen Toka's strength, only she can make that decision. Meanwhile, Toka questions whether winning the battle would truly be a fair victory given Ikki's condition, but Misodi says that despite the selfish desires behind that arranged battle, she only has to fight fairly as that's what Ikki would want her to do. And so the day finally arrives. With the selection for the Festival of the Battle of the Seven Stars coming to an end, Ikki is not the only one who will have to fight his final battle in this stage. There will be 6 battles to decide the 6 selected winners, as everyone had already won 19 battles in total. Among them was Stella facing her opponent, a representative from the previous year's school. But the most anticipated battle for everyone was Ikki against Toka, even called the Battle of the Century and broadcasted on TV, which only increased the excitement. Even the principal, Seikyo, and Toka's teacher, Tortajiro, were in the audience waiting for the fight to begin because they wanted to see how Ikki would fare. Ayase was also there, hoping for Ikki to lose. And so the moment for the battle to begin arrives, but unfortunately, Ikki hasn't arrived yet. According to the rules, if he doesn't arrive within the next 15 minutes, victory will automatically go to Toka. The principal questions Ayase since he promised that the Federation would bring Ikki by car, but he pretends there was a communication failure and that Ikki came on foot. He says it won't be a problem unless Ikki collapses on the way. Clearly they had done something to Ikki, who was walking with great difficulty and was quite injured and frustrated. He remembers his grandfather's words not to give up, but he starts to have a vision of himself saying that those words were empty and meaningless, and that it didn't change the fact that he couldn't defeat an opponent like Toka. Despite everything he's been through and the difficulties, Ikki continues to fight thanks to a fire in his heart. And so he manages to find his sister. Shizuku cries when she sees his condition and says she doesn't want him to go to the battle. But at the same time, she knows it's not up to her to make that decision and acknowledges that unlike when he was at home at school, he smiled as if he were truly enjoying life. At that moment, Ikki sees that he has a huge crowd cheering for him, including all his friends as well as his fencing students and even the people he defeated in previous battles. His sister says that his sword encouraged many people and everyone dreamed through him, including Stella, who appears all excited, showing that she fulfilled her promise and was selected for the Festival of the Battle of the Seven Stars. And so he walks determined to fulfill his part of the promise, just as Stella did by winning that fight. Ikki and Toka enter the arena to face each other with the audience packed, including Alice, who had just finished her last battle and secured her spot in the festival. Seeing Ikki's condition, they wonder what had been done to him during the time he was imprisoned. But despite his injuries, Toka asserts that she will fight to her fullest potential because she wanted to fight Ikki ever since she first saw him. Ikki says he felt the same way and that he will also fight with all his might. Both prepare for the battle they had longed for. As the battle begins, Ikki activates his speed ability, which surprises everyone, as it consumes a lot of his energy and would prevent him from lasting long in the arena. Stella understands that this was Ikki's plan for a reason. He wanted to defeat Toka face to face, and both knew that as he had to get close to her. All she needed to do was dodge him once to win with her powerful Reikiri attack. In other words, they were going to strike a blow that would determine the outcome of the fight. And so they face each other, ignoring everything that battle meant to them, focusing solely on defeating their opponent Knight with all their might in a single strike. Ikki begins to bleed to expand his limit while she prepares to use her Reikiri technique. And thus the long-awaited battle comes to an end with only one single blow, leaving everyone in shock at how quickly the powerful student council president lost a battle. In other words, despite being in bad shape, Ikki managed to win and was selected for the Festival of the Battle of the Seven Stars. Ayase is incredulous and questions whether Toka handed over the victory, but her teacher overhears and assures him that she gave her all. But Ikki managed to expand his capacity so much by using all this power in one blow instead of a minute, allowing him to defeat Toka fairly and deservedly. However, Ayase refuses to accept his loss and tries to attack Ikki, who was completely battered and struggling not to pass out. But Stella, who just wanted to hug her boyfriend, handles Ayase as if he were nothing and rushes to Ikki. He then falls into her arms and she tells him he's an idiot for facing the most powerful student in that condition. But it's precisely because of his nature that she loves him so much. Embraced, Ikki realizes that it was Stella's warmth that motivated him to keep fighting to reach the arena. Realizing how she saved him, Ikki proposes to Stella right there, asking if she accepts to be his family, and moved, Stella accepts his proposal, making everyone celebrate the couple's happiness, and even Shizuku finds the moment cute. Ikki's father was also watching the fight on the live broadcast, but he wasn't the only one. Stella's father calls him to ask that he stop interfering in their children's lives and let the couple be happy in peace. And so Ikki and Stella, along with Alice, Canada, and 2 other girls, officially become the representatives for the Festival of the Battle of the 7 Stars. Toka names Ikki as the leader of the year, leading the entire school to celebrate for him. He becomes emotional finally knowing what it's like to be recognized. And so now with the couple engaged and free from Ikki's family, they continue peacefully at school alongside Shizuku and Alice, with no one getting in their way.